Hi, my name is Buxton. Welcome to one of these beginner series that we've been doing for quite some time now. Today we would like us to cover a few items in regard to the rules of measurements that we've been doing all along. So as I welcome you to this session, I want to say thank you so much for being so supportive. Thank you for accepting to learn from this channel. I would like to urge you that you please make a subscription so that as these content come along in terms of us learning the estimation and quantity surveying at large, you would benefit, and also the channel would grow. I would also like to note that I've received quite positive comments for those who have a specific tailor-made request on terms of what you'd like us to cover. So you'll just have to, there is my number provided in the description of the channel. That number, you can share the items that you want us to cover, and at times when you want it even more in-depth in terms of the coverage, you are always welcome to make what we call a request so that we organize a session. For every session goes at around 1,000 shillings depending on the scope of what you'd like us to cover. So when you have such special requests, please don't hesitate, just reach out so that we are able to cover them in regard to your request, what you'd like us to cover. So today I'm welcoming you to this beginner series, which I'm intending to cover the whole of the rules which are remaining, so that we go to the actual measurements that we've been talking about all along. But as usual, the rules are as important as the measurements. If you have that right basis, then everything else remains as easy as it should be. So welcome to the beginner series, and we'll start from we'll start right away from the part called glazing. So glazing, generally you'll see that when you have you can have different aspects of glazing in the house. For instance, you can have what you call the shop fronts. That is now just the partitioning done in glazing, especially when you have those commercial units like shops, or you have even, let me say, you can do a partition in an office. So all that is forming glazing. You can also have glazing for different aspects. For instance, like in the window, you have glazing there. On the door, maybe on fan light, or just a section of the door, just generally to allow light. So in that case, you have broad categories of glazing that you would experience in terms of estimation or construction at large. So that being noted, then of our interest, as usual, we always try to bring into perspective what we are talking about. Then we also learn how to measure such items. So I would like us to look at that presentation in terms of what has been in terms of that given image. So you can see there are provisions for doors, and also there are also provisions for, you can see there are also provisions for the windows and so on. So such being provided, then you know now these are the intentions or the areas where you're going to provide glazing and so on. And in that case, once you have that, then you need to know also now how you as a quantity surveyor, you're going to do your estimation and do your measurement in terms of that item. So I would like us to start from the general concepts of glazing in terms of the estimation. Of course, I've noted that there are different types of glazing, so you'll realize that you have those that are depending on the purpose. You can have choice for one way. Those are the ones that you can only see through in one way, okay? So especially when you're from inside, you can see, but then the parties from the outside cannot see. Then there are also those that are transparent, both ways. You can be seen. You can see from inside, and also from the outside can also be seen to the inside. That is just an example of them. And then they're also finishing for the glazing as well, including filming, especially when you have one-way glazing, but then you now want to make it filmed in a way that can control the vision from one area to the other. So in this session, from this start, I'd like us to learn how you go about the same. So glazing generally is measured in square meters. So that is what you have to note. So generally you will do your measurement in square meters. Okay, that is the rule under rule U3. Okay, but then now there is a concept of doing that given estimation or the measurements in stages of. For stage 1, you have not exceeding 0.1 square meters, stating the number of panes. Then over 0.1, but not exceeding 0.5 square meters. Okay. Then over 0.5, and continuing in further stages of 0.5 square meters. So as usual, from this channel, I always intend to make what is explained in theory to become more realistic, for you to digest it even better in terms of understanding. When you talk about stages of 0.5 square meters, what does it mean and how do you handle such, especially now that when you are intended to do that description. You can make the description, but then it's always safer when you understand that specific meaning of that description, rather than just having to express it theoretically without now the proper knowledge in terms of what it means in a real sense. So I want to give you there is a schedule here, a drawing schedule of a window that I would like you to have a look at. So this is a representation of a window that is intended to be fixed. Okay, this is now how it has been drawn. So in this case, how would you make your description? Of course, you will measure your glazing. In this case, will be in square meters. That is what the rule has said. But then in your description, to be more precise, you need to describe the sizes of these panes in stages of 0.5 square meters. So I just want to show you how does that 0.5 come along, or what does it mean in real sense. Okay, so I just want to show you a simple calculation in an Excel, so that you see how we calculate that, and then we determine in which stage do we categorize these particular panes. So when you look at those particular panes, the one which is now going to lead into your description in of the glazing in different stages. So this is what you can come up with in terms of the areas that you identify what category are you going to put your panes. I will show you how that description is to be made. But then look at these. So you have the glazing. So I will talk about that top area, which is the top pane. I'd like to do the top pane so that you see that. These so the top area would be okay. So talk about that given dimension. It's going to be 2.75 times before we calculate the particular panes, of course you will have to get the area for this glazing in this case. But then now what you'll do, just measure it as it is overall. So overall it would be let me say 2.75, and then we multiply by the height. In this case is 3.35. So the total area for the glazing is the 9.21. Yeah, of course you can express it in complete, or let me say you can round it up or so on. So once you have, now this is the total glazing area, total glazing area in that case. But then now for particular paints, now there's that description that you are going to categorize the particular paints in different categories. So we can start with the top pane and we get the area. So we can just talk about top pane area would be that is equals to, this is 2.75 times this is 0.45. okay, so that is the area, and of course that one is the same as the top and the bottom panes are of equal areas. So the area is 1.2 square meters. Okay, square meters, that is 1.23. Can say you can round it up to whichever figure that you wish. For instance, you can talk about how many decimal places. Let me say 2. So that is 1.24 square meters. So there are two panes. The bottom, the top and the bottom panes is 1.24 square meters. Then we have the other bigger panes in at the intermediate, and that those ones would be. So we can just talk about intermediate panes so that we see where they fall in terms of that description, and that would be 2.05 times, now these are specific smaller partitions. Let's see what they come to. Let me just try to figure out that particular dimension. So you can do it in this manner. You can see the 2750. First of all, you can do the 2750 so that you get the widths of these smaller, the two intermediate panes. That would be, you can say, so the length, the height is clear. The height is 2050. Let me just take it this side so that you see that. So the height is 2050. But then for the breadth, that is the one that I would like us to calculate. So we can start with that. So we have 2750, then we subtract. So the 2750, then we subtract. Subtract the intermediate, that middle partitioning, in terms of, you can call it the middle partition of, or when it's a metal, whichever material that it is. But then we can do 150. So the 2750, then we subtract 150 in that case, and then we'll now divide this by 2 so that we have the area for just one. So we have that divided by 2, we have 1.3. So the area would be is equals to 2.05 then multiplied by 1.3. okay, so this is 2 can do it also into 2 square meter, 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places would be 2.67 square meters. Okay, and then we have the other one at the other two are 1.24 square meters. So the reason that we are heading towards this distribution is because we are going to measure this particular glazing, but then you realize that the description should be giving you the particular stages in which the glazings in there are going to be divided. So in this case, you realize that we are not going to express this particular glazing in this total area, because there are different categories of the glazing of the panes, and that is why the rule is telling you that you measure it in square meters generally. That is clear, but then now you give the size of the panes, you classify the size of the panes as such. Okay, So the other one, you can see there is a particular area that we have. Let's just see what the areas that we've calculated. So one is 1.24 square meters. Okay, that is the size of one. And then the other intermediate panes are 2.67. So we are going to have the first category in terms of the area. The first category, what is it going to be? So you look, give the total area. So just talk about category 1. Category 1. So the total area of category 1 is equals to, so that is the area that is 1.24. okay, so the total area of 1.24, the top and the bottom panes, as we've calculated, that is going to be 2.75 times 0.45. okay, as we are done. So that is going to be, total area is 2.75 times 0.45. There are 2 panes, okay, that is 2.475. But then that category 1, in terms of the classification, is the one that you need now to identify. It's 1.24. So 1.24, where does it fall? Not exceeding 0.1 square meters, stating the numbers, no? Over 0.1, but not exceeding 0.5. The other one is 1. So over 0.5 and continuing further stages of 0.5. So over 0.5, not exceeding 1. So over 1, not exceeding 1.5, and so on. So where does this one fall? 1.24. So 1.24 should be falling in over 1.5. Over 1.5 square meters, but not exceeding sorry, I mean over 1.0 square meters, but not exceeding 1.50 square meters. That is category 1. That is why it's falling. Then now category 2. Category 2, we now also get its total area. Category 2, the total area for category 2, we get it. The area, let's calculate the total area. Now the two intermediate areas, they are going to be 2.05 times the one that we already calculated. So for the intermediate panes, let's see the sizes. One is 2.05. It's close to 2.05 times, let's see what we got at the sizes. In terms of the width was 1.3. okay, then there are 2 number. So the one, this one, the other category, the total area is 5.33 square meters. But then now the category, which one do we classify it into? You see the area that we got for one pane is 2.67. So in this case, in that order of 0.5 increment in terms of the areas, would be over 2.0, actually over 2.5, but not exceeding 3.00 square meters. Okay, yes. So when you, supposing that you are doing your BQ for this, in terms of the glazing for the windows, you will have to describe it in this order, because your description is only going to have one category at a time. So you will have total area, quantity, under the column for quantity will be, in this case, if you round it up, it will be, you will say 3 square meters, 3.00. The unit, of course, it's going to be square meters. Talk about square meters, and of course you'll have your rate and so on, and then you have your amount, the column for the amount. Then your description. Under your description is where you're going to have, so you talk about description here. You're going to have glazing. Let me say glazing. You can talk about thickness, so you can say, for instance, 4 millimeters thick, one way glazing. Okay, for the purposes of description, just make sure that you are precise as possible. 4 millimeter thick, one way glazing. Then you say pens in size. Pens in size. So for the first category, 1.0 square meters. I talk about over 1.0 square meters, but not exceeding 1.50 square meters. Okay, so that is now your full description in terms of that particular category. Then the other category, you will do the same, describing just the same way we've done for this. You have to express the category. So as the rule is stating, because that is what we are following in terms of the standard methods of measurements, you describe the glazing that you have. You describe the glazing that you have in categories of that particular order. So that is entirely what it means. And if you are wondering why you will have to do all that, the reason is, okay, so these are the one that you are talking about. So the reason is, just let me just see if there's any other thing that we are missing. So we are okay with that. So the reason that these glazing have been described into this particular order is that you shall never forget that the basis of doing our relying on this rule is because that you, being as a quantity surveyor, you need to always make a description vividly in the way in which the working is going to be done in terms of implementation. But then you realize that when you are going to build to install these glazing, for instance, on a window, the one that I was presenting here, then definitely this particular window, it's going to be cut in particular sizes. So of course the overall area that you're going to have is going to giving you the total amount, but then the description should be specific in that for what sizes are these windows going to be brought, so that they are put in that particular structure for the window as it has been done. So that is the whole essence of you having to distinguish and describe the breakdown in terms of the areas in which these windows are going to be brought on site, ready for installation. So precisely that is the rule, and that is how you digest that, and how you can do it in terms of your expression, in terms of description. So I've tried to break it down as much as I can, but then you realize that these items, we are going to interact with them for so long. Even when we now start doing the estimations and also the measurements on a one-on-one basis, you realize that we are going to break down so many of them, and definitely it's going to even be easier for you to put them more into perspective. But for now, I would like us to stop that explanation at that point and see another areas that I will also like to give you our definition on in terms of expression and what we need to understand for the rules under glazing for our session today. So let's see if at all there is any other thing that we also need to take into consideration in as much as glazing is concerned. So let's see if at all there is something else we need to cover. We have lights. The other one that I also identified that it's also worth noting, it's this part here, the mirror. So we're talking about glazing that has been transformed into another form. It has not been installed directly into what we need. Okay, So we have it, maybe it has been done into a backing, or you have it installed maybe onto a wall or something, but then now you're using it, you're intending to use it as a mirror. So how do you go about that, and then how exactly is that supposed to be measured? So generally for the mirrors, of course, you will do it you'll enumerate it. You will just measure them in number. So depending on the information that you have 1, 2, 3, 4 mirrors in the house. But then it's so important that you talk about it being polished in terms of, so that it's definitely a mirror, because you understand that you're using a glass, but then you have to modify it so that it fits what you need, the purpose for which it's intended. So once that is done, then you need to measure them in number. After that, describe it as how it's supposed to be, how they are supposed to be, how it's supposed to be done in that particular order. So that is entirely bringing us to the end of glazing that we are intending to cover for now. But then let's see if we have another item that we can cover also quite pretty fast. So next, just before we conclude this session, so of course I realize that we can maybe cover 2 items. So I would also like us to cover on painting and decorating. So that is under section V of these rules that we've been covering all along. So painting and decorating, this is simply the final finish that you are intended to estimate or do your measurements for in terms of for a given house, a given structure, and so on for a quantity surveyor. So that said, we, as usual, we are always intending to have the appropriate way in which this is done, so that we have a typical explanation in terms of what is existing and how you can go about that in terms of your measurements. So as the first description is talking about, you always do your working in terms of separate that working in terms of internal work and also external work. So I have this one of projects that I can present to you so that we see what exactly is going on. Okay, so when you talk about internal work, you also talk about external work. Then we need to put this into perspective and get it even more clear. So for instance, you have this particular house. Okay, it has to be painted. Of course, you have finishing on the exterior part, that is now the bush finishing. But then now for even a classy and more aesthetically appealing look, you can intend to make it painted and so on. So of course, when you describe your working to be external and also internal, so external can typically mean now how you are going to paint now, paint and decorate the external bit. Then we also have items like the fascia. So generally, you can talk about now that is now on the eaves finishing. Okay, so under the eaves finishing, you will be talking about painting to the fascia, the one that is now fascia is that timber that you can see on that particular presentation. So that particular finishing, that is now going to fall under the external. But of course, you can see the eaves where you'll have to be installed the PVC in terms of the ceiling to the eaves finishing. So all that you describe it as an external paint works. But then now when you go to the internal, now inside the house, okay, now within the house, which other areas are you going to paint, and how do you describe that in terms of how do you measure that in terms of estimation? So that said, you realize that for the inside of the house, you'll do it also in square meters. Okay, sorry to miss on one. For items, for instance, on the outside walls, generally you'll do it in square meters, and you have to remember the concept of net measurement, so that you are having just exactly what you're supposed to, and you're supposed to paint. Okay, so that said, then really there are other items. For instance, I've talked about the eaves finishing, like the fascia that I was presenting now. The fascia you will do it in linear meters, but then depending on the size. When it's below 300 millimeters, that is what the rule tells us that we do it in linear meters. Then you state the girth. For instance, this is 250. Okay. So 250, you get the girth for the 250. Then you also add to the bottom of it, because to the inside is not going to be worked on in terms of the painting. So the 250 and then 25, so that is 275. So that is you measure the whole length of this fascia all around the house. Okay, just as you can see, it's being presented. Okay, of course we'll reach here when the painting is done, and I'll also present it for you later on. But then before there, you realize that you measure the whole of that length for that particular fascia. So let's see. Perfect. So you see that particular angle in which the presentation is, the video is playing. You measure the whole of that length all around the house, and then after that you do it in linear meters, and then you state the girth of the painting that is going to be the area, that feature that is going to be painted. So once you are aware of that, then it's straightforward. You can go to your plan, try to estimate the total length around the house. Then you state the girth in which I've told you that you add the face, which can be in different dimensions. For instance, I'm talking about 250 for this case. Then you add the bottom of it. Okay, the face and the bottom. Okay, once you have that, then you talk about linear meters. Then you talk about also the girth of that particular painting. So I've told you that categorization, you do it internal work, also external work. Internal work, the painting that is associated with within the house. External work, those that are done to the outside of the house. And we've just seen vivid elaboration with an existing project, and how you will go about that in terms of your working. So there isn't much in as much as painting is concerned, because as you are aware, when you know how to deduce your dimensions, then you can straight away go to what you are supposed to do. So this is the rule that I was talking about. Just need to also make it more clearer for you. So you can see we are talking about work on surfaces over 300 millimeters. Okay, over 300 millimeters when you've measured the girth. For instance, talking about wall above 300, talking about ceiling. So all those that go beyond 300 millimeters, do it in square meters, and that is what the rule is talking about. Okay, then those that are below, those that are not exceeding 300, then you do them in linear meters. So yeah, when you read that rule going on, you'll realize what I'm talking about and how that is put into perspective. Then classification shall be done as follows. On walls, okay, talk about walls. Yes, so we are talking about the categorization. We're talking about the categorization of the paintwork. So you talked about walls. Yeah, of course, you can see now these are walls, and as well as I've explained previously, you need to do it net, so that these spaces will be having the windows. Of course, when the window has been installed and so on, such paintworks are going to be catered for elsewhere under windows. So for now, when you're doing your walls, paintworks for the walls, then you need to deduct those areas. So once the plaster has been done, then you have your painting, only the net in terms of the areas that are going to be associated with the paintworks. So that is quite clear. Just have a look. In terms of walling, this is what you need to. Of course, after plastering, I'm not saying that you measure your paintworks here, but then after the plastering and also the preparation, skimming you've done, undercoat, paintworks, and so on, do it in square meters. Then as you progress, you notice there are other categories. So after you've categorized them into walls, then you also have the ceiling. Okay, these are just walls. Then let's see, talking about ceiling, for instance. In this case, of course, in this case these are just trusses, but then you will do brandering, and then you install gypsum. For instance, this is intended to be on gypsum finishing. So once you've installed the gypsum on top of for this ceiling finish, then you measure that paintworks in that case. So those are the categories. I've talked about category for the wall, and I'm also telling you about category under ceiling, which is basically in most cases just a reflected area for the reflected area for the floor finish. So once you have those dimensions, then should be having your area as well. So that is those are the categories that I'm talking about. Let's see if we have another thing that we can talk about. So on floors, when you have painting on the floors, maybe you are talking about painting the, though this can also be under the floor finishes, painting for what we call you can have timber flooring and so on. But then those are the categories of paintworks that you as a quantity surveyor you need to take into consideration whenever you are handling such. Then the other categories on other general surfaces are grouped together, separately dealt with here in different categories that we've covered. So we've covered different categories in terms of walls, ceilings, floors, and so on. So that is generally how you handle such paintworks. The first principle I talk about is square meters. That is the main reference that you as a quantity surveyor you need to rely on. And then to make your work even more precise is in terms of categorization of different areas that you are talking about in terms of the estimation that we've seen. Okay, of course there are those that you do it in linear meters, and I've just shown you, given you a walkthrough in terms of how to handle such in your estimation. Okay, yeah, paintworks, they come in different for different areas. You can have paintworks for the windows, you can have paintworks for the doors, you can have paintworks for window boards, window sills, so many areas. So, and decorating generally on gutters. Okay, also these you can also see it in linear meters that we've also covered. Okay, unless it's beyond 300. So that is the main reference. You have to talk about that. Of course, on pipes you can see it's in linear meters. So whenever you've seen, whenever you have bills of quantities, then what clicks into your mind is now the main principle in which how you are supposed to undertake that estimation. So once you know the rule, you know the reference, then it's easier for you to trace exactly what you are talking about in terms of what you need to measure and how exactly you need to go through that. So it's always simple when you know the rule and you also know how to read your drawings, something that we are going to cover just immediately we have finished finished covering these general rules, which are just so crucial for you to understand for a smooth running going forward in terms of how you need to handle your subsequent work. So that is how it goes. It's very straightforward, and I've also tried to make the elaboration as easy as I can so that it's straightforward, you understand how it goes, and so on. So just need to appreciate how that is done. We've talked about walls. Of course, these are for this project, the walls plastering is yet to be done. Okay, but then now in your case, how do you go about that? And of course there is one thing that I also need to mention. In this case, I believe somewhere when I started, okay, let's have a look at just somewhere here. Yeah, this looks fine. So you realize that when you're doing your areas in square meters, then it's always from the finished floor level, and of course to the soffit of to the top of the soffit of the ceiling. That is how it needs to be spanning in terms of the height. So when you have the beam and so on, you need to go above the beam. Okay, we'll come and see how that interesting it can be in terms of now the actualization of expressing those different dimensions. So top of the finished floor level to the soffit of the ceiling. So when you have a beam, you need to go beyond the beam. Like in this case, you can see the beam is just there, but then you need to measure your height to the top of the beam. Just look at top of your screen, you will see where the beam is. So once we shall have installed the ceiling boards, then you now need to measure your paintworks to the bottom to the top. So that is how it goes. If you do it just below the what we call the ring beam, then you shall be having a less area in terms of what needs to be implemented. So that brings us to this the end of this session for today. I believe it was one that was worthwhile. So as we get to the end, I would urge you that as they come, as interesting as they are, they will always keep coming. So today we have managed to cover two sections so deeply. So the next sessions we also need to cover. There are a few other areas that are remaining that we need to work on. So once that is complete, then we'll dive into our drawings, interpretation of the drawings, and also doing our estimation, so that at the end of the day you become fully competent from this channel. You are able to understand what you are doing, and you are able to do a serious project and be able to deliver as a quantity surveyor. So no doubt that this channel is going to help you. Thank you for watching up to this point. I would urge you to please make a subscription, share as much as you can. Let's keep learning, enjoying learning together. Thank you so much. Have a blessed time. Till next time that we meet for the next session. And those who need tailor-made sessions, please just go to have my number from the description. Hit that number, text me or call me when you can, so that we organize ours. It's very cost friendly, and trust me that you are going to get the value for your money. Thank you so much. Have a blessed time. Bye bye.